Hello, and welcome to the Vocal Cosmetologist. My name is Darcy Harrison, and I'm the host of the Vocal Cosmetologist. I have been MIA for quite a while from these episodes. I have been trying to kind of just focus on doing the salon work and trying to just keep everyone safe, keep myself safe, and pretty much the only thing that I do is home or grocery store or working clients. And I've been working by myself in the salon, so I'm as safe as I can be. But I wanted to take an opportunity to talk more about me personally and professionally because I've been working as a cosmetologist in Washington State and specifically Seattle since 2003. I did have a little break in there, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about my her story and hair story. You see what I'm doing there? Hey, little puns inside. Just because I have had an interesting kind of road to success as a hairstylist. And I wanted to give you some insight and context as to where I've been and where I have, learned and all of that stuff. So one quick note, one of the reasons why I took a break from doing these episodes is I had to put my 20-year-old cat Sassy down in August. And so that was really hard. But in September, I adopted a bonded pair of kittens. And they are both fully black, what we call void kitties. And I have one that's being naughty right now and trying to drink out of my water glass. This is Ash. And then I also have another one named Lando. And we don't know if they're half brothers or full brothers because there was two pregnant kitties at the same time swapping babies between them for nursing. So, okay, where to start? Well, I do want to give you a little insight before I got into doing hair. I grew up in Rhode Island. I was brought up in the town called Portsmouth, which is part of Aquidneck Island, which is near Newport, Rhode Island, which everyone knows about for the mansions and the sailboats and all that stuff. But I grew up in an area with a beautiful view of the Narragansett Bay and the Mount Hope Bridge. And I had the fortune of being able to grow up with horses and pasture and doing horseback riding. My mom was very, very involved with having horses. I like to call her the stage mom of horses because she was always pushing my sister and I to ride horses. And a little tidbit is my exposure to braiding was horsehair braiding with the manes for competitions. They would do all these intricate braids in the mane and then take thread and wrap them up so they became like lots of little nubs, as well as braiding the tail. So I watched my mom playing with hair since I was very, very little. And the first experience I had with doing hair, ironically, was on myself. A lot of us have had that experience of working to play with our own hair before we were supposed to. So one of my very first memories is of at 5 years old, being sent off to kindergarten on the bus. But before I got on the bus, I remember very, very clearly that I had a metal tin lunchbox that they usually would have these raised decorations so that, it wasn't just flat. It had kind of little bubbly things. It was my Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs lunchbox, and for my birthday I had gotten a pair of safety scissors. And I also vividly remember the safety scissors. They were bright sort of orangey red, and they were kind of big and plastic, and they had these big googly eyes on them. And I remember my mother saying to me, okay, you can take these to school, but you cannot take them out of your lunchbox until you get to school. Promise? And I said, promise, Mommy. And then I got on the school bus and I sat in my seat and I flipped my hair upside down with my head, kind of between my legs, and started to go to town cutting my hair. My hair was like one length past my shoulders. And so I didn't do this, with any major thought about consequence, of course, because you're not thinking of that at 5 years old. But I went into here and I went to there, and I don't know how it looked. I don't remember how it looked. But I got to school and the teachers sort of looked at me sideways, were like, I think you need to go to the principal's office. I was like, why? And I go to the principal's office. They're like, yeah, I don't think your mom let you leave the house looking like that. We should call your mom. I was like, why? Doesn't it look good? And it was probably the most jacked up thing that you've ever seen. And so my mother came to school and picked me up and brought me home because I was also in trouble because one of the little girls on the bus had said, what are you doing? I said, I'm cutting my hair. And she said, why don't you do that to me? And don't worry, I didn't cut off all her hair like I had cut off all of mine. She had a big ponytail on top and very, very long hair. And so she had little wispies at the bottom of her hair. And so I decided that that was a smart idea, that I wouldn't cut off her ponytail, smart thinking, but I would cut off the little wispies. And I didn't get in trouble for cutting my own hair. I got in trouble for cutting those little wispies on her. So the timing of that was very serendipitous, because what happened was that the next day was school pictures. So my mother had to rush me to the hairstylist to get it fixed, and fixed is nominal considering there was probably 5 million different lengths going on in my hair. And I think the directive was, you know, fix it, but try and keep as much length as possible. And I liken it to the Winona Ryder film, Girl Interrupted. She had a very, very short pixie where it was like really short in through here, and it was just like really, really short. And that's what it looked like, but it looked like they left a little overhang over my ear on purpose. Like that was the directive, keep as much length as possible, and it just looked lopsided and weird. So but the picture is hysterical because I have like this goofy look in my face and this little girl with her dress and her necklace, and that was my first experience cutting hair. So when many years later, after I went through college, I got a BFA in acting, which I joke around with my clients is a very lucrative career. And I'm being sarcastic. It is not a lucrative career. But I am from a family of artists. My father was an industrial designer and a professor, and my mother was a sculptor. And the rest of my extended family are all visual artists, whether it's two-dimensional or three-dimensional. So I was sort of the anomaly being involved with performing arts until I got into doing hair. So now I have something tangible to say, hey, look, I did that, rather than, hey, I'm here in the spotlight, hey. And then, you know, the show is over and then it's over. I don't have anything to prove for it. So there you go. So anyway, I graduated from college in Boston and I had the degree. And so I went home and moved home for a little while, and then got really sick of that because I really didn't like living in Rhode Island. And I decided I had visited Seattle and I liked the vibe. I knew it was far away from my family and also far away from reputation of my sister or my father, and that I could make my own identity and not have someone be like, oh, you're so-and-so's sister, you're so-and-so's daughter, which is nice to a degree, but doesn't feel like, you know, your accomplishments are your own, that it sort of felt like I would have been kind of riding on someone's coattails a little bit. So ooh, let's turn that off. Phone went off. I don't need to answer that right now. So I did retail jobs. I did restaurant jobs. I temped. And after 9/11, my temp contract wasn't renewed. And so I was unemployed for about 6 months and living off of unemployment, and was very bored trying to compete for jobs that I was not super interested in doing, but, you know, I needed to apply for jobs. And also there were people that were 5 times more qualified than I was applying for those jobs. So I wasn't getting called for interviews or whatever. And so, hearkening back to all of the, you know, not just the selfie haircut when I was 5, I was always cutting and coloring my own hair in high school and college, and, you know, messing up and, you know, sort of dealing with the happy accidents that come with that. And my mother suggested, you know, you've always been really into hair. Why don't you, you know, go to beauty school and become a hairstylist? And because it was my mother's idea, I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I have friends who are hairstylists. I don't want to take their thing. And then I had a couple more months of sitting around applying for jobs that I didn't want anyway, and sort of came back around to this idea. And I was like, yeah, so you were talking about me being a hairstylist and sending me to beauty school. You still want to help me go to beauty school? And she said, sure. And I had thought about maybe if I was going to go and get my master's in something. And I was like, I don't want more tests and exams and papers and lectures. And I also don't know if that's going to lead to a paying job either if I decide to get a master in performing arts or acting or directing or whatever. I wanted something that I could enjoy and make money at. And I feel that hairstyling marries those two things together. So I went to beauty school, and at the time I was 25, which ironically is old for beauty school or cosmetology school, as we put it. And a lot of people were 18 or 19 years old, and I was very focused on just getting the program done. And it takes about a year full time in Washington State to get the hours, and then you do a computer exam and a practical exam, and then you're licensed. I did all that. It was challenging, challenging to be around people that, were straight out of high school, and I was already on the other side of college and, kind of living on my own for a while. Once I graduated, I was very, very clear. I was not very married to the idea of becoming an apprentice or an assistant and trying to get more knowledge or experience. And so I went to go work for a salon as a stylist right away. I had one particular salon I really, really wanted to work at, and I auditioned and I got a chance to work there, but they had a very, very high expectation for return clientele. They had like a whole formula. And so after 6 months, it's very challenging. There's a lot of adjustment to expectations, and skill level isn't quite 100% at that point. A lot of us in the industry talk about how we don't feel like we learned everything we needed to learn in beauty school. And that certainly was the case for me. And so I was trying to find education wherever I could. And I just wasn't able to retain the clientele as much as maybe someone who was a little bit more experienced, because there's, kind of a learning curve. And also, you're sort of just getting used to taking paying clients for full price at that point. So that didn't work out. And so then I was like, well, maybe I should go booth rent. And so I had some help from family to get that started. And I did it in downtown Seattle, which was very expensive. And I made it work for as long as I could, but I did not have a clientele. And I didn't have enough experience in business to understand what I was doing. So it was kind of a stab in the dark. And so when things started to feel like they weren't kind of working, doing just that, I went and got a job cocktailing at a club and a lounge so that I could hopefully make my bills on both the business and my personal expenses. And at a certain point, I was like, I am ready to just fall apart. This is too much for me. And so I was very lucky to have a owner decide that, she was okay with letting me out of my chair lease. And so I took a break from doing hair. And so I went to go work as a barista for a few years. And I called that my cleansing the palate. I needed to clear my head. I kind of felt like it was a crisis of confidence. I didn't feel smart as a business owner. I felt like I was failing as a hairstylist. I just didn't feel confident. I didn't feel on top of what I felt I needed to be on top of. And so my solution was, I'm just going to find some stasis and just focus on paying my bills for a while and slowly kind of get back to, hopefully maybe get back to doing hair. So when I was ready to come back to hair, I auditioned for a very fancy high-end salon that had an assistant program that you could work in the salon as well as get training, but get paid to train. And so I was like, wow, that is a perfect opportunity, especially since there was a teacher that had worked with Vidal Sassoon that I felt would have been very beneficial to me to learn some more in-depth hair cutting education. They also had lots of advanced hair coloring education as well. And so I worked my butt off. I stayed working as a barista. And I also worked many, many hours training and working at that high-end salon. And I felt that particular salon was not conducive to me as a stylist. I started to see signs. There were certain techniques I was banned from using or trying. I was also told that they didn't want clients that wanted creative color because that wasn't the type of client they wanted there. And, you know, it's a modern day and age, and Seattle has a lot of people with good income that want fun hair colors. So I was confused by that. I was also confused by the instruction that I had to tell people what they want rather than listening to what they want. And there was just a lot of things that were kind of not fitting, and I was trying to fit into their mold, and it was just becoming more and more obvious that I was not going to be successful at this place. And so they did a massive layoff during the recession, and so a bunch of assistants and managers were let go, and I was one of them. Day before Thanksgiving. Thank you. No, not thank you. But it was a blessing in disguise, which happens a lot in this industry. There's a lot of like, oh man, that sucks. And then you look back on it years later and you're like, well, I'm actually glad that happened. So I refused to go on unemployment because I was laid off technically. And I was motivated to go and find a place to do hair. And I found the place that I'm actually at now, that I'm one of the owners of, Emerson Salon. In the previous ownership, took me on as a part-time stylist at first. And I worked really hard and went eventually full-time. And that was challenging because the salon owners were not salon industry people. And so they kind of did things that were a little different. They wanted us to write blogs, which was new at the time in 2008, to sort of show what kind of experience and expertise that you have through the written word, and not just like videos and pictures and things like that. And so I did a lot of that. I blogged a lot. I talked about the products that I, used and how to create looks, and then also trying to relate it to movies and fashion and things like that. So I got really good at marketing myself as a hairstylist, whether it's through social media or pictures or whatever. And also, being able to talk about the work in a articulate and professional way, rather than like, oh, I just foiled it, or, oh, I just colored it. So that is how eventually I got to becoming a booth renter, or a small business owner, self-employed, in the former ownership of Emerson Salon. And then when they no longer wanted to own a salon, my business partner and I took over the space, created a new lease, created an LLC, and we turned it into our own booth rental salon. And we, rebranded, and we changed the website, and, just a whole bunch of stuff. But we had the advantage of having already been in that space. We had the advantage of knowing that neighborhood. We had the advantage of not having to pay for a big build out. We just had to, do a little bit of redecorating and swapping out of stuff. And it was really, really an eye-opening experience that, we went from being employees to being there long enough that we could generally run the location. So that is the story of what's going on now. We've been there since 2014 as co-owners, Lancer, Forney McMahon, and myself. And last year, we were very lucky to receive an award for the Association of Washington Business, gave us an award for the work that we did to amplify the grassroots effort in Washington State to protect self-employed cosmetologists and booth rental, as well as independent contractors. And a lot of what I have learned through my work marketing theater and doing marketing of hair salon and hairstyling was able to expand that knowledge and get my fingers out in community outreach to assist in making sure that we could battle the legislation that was going to harm our businesses. And we got a whole bunch of bills killed. And so going forward, we are working to make our own trade association in Washington State called Cosmetologists of Washington United. And I've talked about this before. I'm the interim board secretary at the moment and the strategic planning committee member. And advocacy is a really big part of my priorities and also my mission and purpose and objective is to make sure I use my ability to be outspoken and articulate and educated on issues and things to push things that I care about. So I care about staying self-employed in Washington State. I also care about LGBTQ plus rights. I also care about women's rights. I care about human rights. I care about voting rights. I care about Black Lives Matter, Black Trans Lives Matter. And hopefully in the future, I'll be able to expand more of my advocacy work going forward, because I think our work in the community as hairstylists is so unique because we are able to talk to many, many people who talk to many, many people in their lives. And so it's very easy for me to talk to people and to get them aware of things that I would hope that they would want to care about. And in our industry, we attract a lot of people that are like ourselves. A lot of the times it's not necessarily just our skill that they come back for. They come back for the conversation and the care and the focus that we put on them. And what we care about, hopefully they care about, and vice versa. It's a symbiotic two-way street relationship working with clients. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is kind of my philosophy of hair. I deliberately wore my hair down today because I wanted to talk about naturally textured hair. I have wavy, frizzy hair. I have one side of my family is what we call WASP, White Anglo-Saxon Protestant, from Connecticut, kind of blue bloods, kind of snobby people. And then the other side of my family are of Russian Jewish heritage. My father's side were Russian immigrants. And so I have that heritage in my hair. I've always had issues with my wavy curly hair. And I remember when I was little, another anecdote is I remember at 11 years old, sitting in the car and pulling down the visor in the mirror and looking at my hair and being like, I don't know what to do with my hair, Mom. And my mom's driving. And I was like, I just feel ugly. I don't know what to do with my hair. I didn't feel confident. I didn't feel empowered. I didn't know how to style it, how to brush it, how to any of it. And I was looking to my mother to teach me. And she's like, I don't know what to do with my hair either. And she had even coarser hair than me, even curlier hair than me. And my experience seeing her go to the hairstylist was hearing about what she didn't want and how she wasn't heard and she didn't feel like her hairstylist listened to her. She would go and she would get her hair cut and colored. And she'd say, please don't straight blow out my hair. Please don't blow out my hair and put hairspray in it. And she'd do it anyway. And I remember every single time she would come back from the hairstylist, she would go and wash her hair because she didn't like how it looked and she didn't like how it felt. And it wasn't her. And so when I came to doing hair, I wanted to amplify the person that's in my chair. I wanted to find that sort of inner glow. And if someone doesn't feel like their hair fits them, they're not going to have that confidence or that glow. And they won't be able to make that first impression that they want to make. They might come across the wrong way. Presenting yourself doesn't mean that you're vain or that you're superficial. It means that this is reflecting who you are on the inside. Who your heart is can come out when you feel like your outside reflects how you feel. And so that's why it's very important that I work with people that are genderqueer, gender fluid, trans, gay, all of that, because a lot of that community feels like they had to hide who they really are, or that they have to fit in a box, or, there's a lot of issues with trans passing and things like that. And so I try to be a non-judgmental, open, and accepting and tolerant person as a hairstylist, working with a very diverse clientele, people of color and LGBTQ, and just the wide gamut of personalities that people have and styles. There's so many different style aesthetics these days. It's not just preppy. It's not just people are mixing and matching and doing different things and getting inspired from different, fashion runway things, or just coming up with their own stuff and DIYing some fashion. And so my big focus when it comes to people like me with natural textured hair is I don't want them to feel like I am trying to force them into straightening their hair or relaxing their hair, or you need to have this treatment for your hair to behave the way it needs. I want to be there to say, hey, these products are right for you, but if you feel like, this other product is working for you, as long as it's sulfate free, I'm happy. I want them to feel like yes, I'm there to make money as a professional, but I also want them to holistically know that the products that I want them to use are to help them feel confident. It's not necessarily about, I just want to sell. I'm not going to put 6 products in front of them. And yes, the traditional knowledge is that that's what we should do. Yes, if you want a shampoo, conditioner, leave-in, styling aid, finisher, if you want all the recommendations, fine, let's do it. I will write it all down, and if you can get some of it and get some of it later, is fine with me. But I want them to feel comfortable in my chair and not feel like I'm pushing them at the end of the service to just buy. I try to make sure that when I sit down with a client that has naturally textured hair, I say to them, hey, I'm here to work with your texture, and you're going to have different frizz and textures all over your head. So as much as I want to give you a technically precise haircut, sometimes in order for it to work for your hair type and for your needs, it has to be customized to your texture. And so sometimes that means it's not going to be absolutely technically precise all the way around your head. You're not going to be able to pull out 2 hairs and be like, well, they match, because maybe, there's different curl pattern on either side of the head, and so they bounce up different ways. And so when they sit fine, but when you pull them tight, yeah, they're different. Obviously, if someone wants an even haircut, I'm still going to be working with it to make sure that it's even, but I try to make sure I'm not using too much tension, and I try not to use have it completely saturated. I work a little bit wet to dry. Sometimes I'll work on it dry, then wash it and see how it diffuses when I dry it, and then detail it from there. It's I call it an organic sculpture. Part of what I'm doing is working with this 3-dimensional shape. And sometimes it's just really, I call it topiary cutting, especially when it comes to people that tend towards more of an afro kind of look, is sometimes not touching it, not pulling on it, just cutting where it's at and determining how is it bouncing up and how is it feeling and looking. And that tends to be the most successful for people. And I just learned that through trial and error. There are certain techniques that I use. I try to limit how I use layers. I try to use very strategic texture. I try not to use razors. I try not to use thinning shears unless I'm doing a very, very short haircut, or they want something really shattered and they have lots of fine hair. Hair analysis is really, really important in cosmetology. So the last thing I'm going to say is I want to talk a little bit natural texture going into Black Lives Matter a little bit is from state to state, there's a lot of efforts with the Crown Act to stop hair discrimination, because people are being discriminated against for housing, loans, credit, jobs, or, just everyday microaggressions that, not having straight hair is looked down on. And to be honest, I think that is slowly, thank goodness, changing. We're accepting people's curl. And to be honest, when I was at that fancy high-end salon, I asked specifically, once I got to the sort of towards the end of their advanced program, I said, okay, well, we've been working on mostly straight hair this whole year. When do I get to start learning how to work with curly hair or textured hair? And they're like, oh, we don't teach that here. And I just was like, what? Like literally over 80% of the world has textured hair. Even if they don't have fully curly hair, some people have fine straight hair, but it's a little frizzy. It behaves different than stick straight fine hair or stick straight Asian hair, right? It's all different. Or someone could be mixed race and they have different things going on with their texture that's not oh, you have white hair, or oh, you have black hair, or oh, you have Latinx hair, or you have Puerto Rican hair. You know what I mean? Like that they have lots of different DNA. And so their hair has lots of different DNA and essence to it. So that's why I approach everyone's head of hair differently. And I try and listen to the hair and make sure that I understand what they want, what they need, maintenance, products, all of that stuff. And, you know, I also, a big thing is I don't want to create more trauma for people that have natural textured hair. I had one haircut when I was younger. For some reason, my mother thought it was okay to send me off to the local chain hairstyling salon, and that I would be okay doing my own consultation at 12 years old. As a professional now, I would tell you that it would not be acceptable. That is not okay. That the parent should come in and, you know, oversee the consultation. And I remember specifically, and this is the 90s, so I'm getting up in years, so this is the 90s, and I remember asking, like, I want it to be a little bit shorter in the front and longer in the back. And to me, that meant a little bit shorter, longer. So I wanted it rounded. But what they heard was I wanted shorter and longer in back. And what is that? That's a mullet. And I remember it took forever for the short hair that they had feathered so nicely that I hated. It took forever for it to grow out. So that's why consultation is so important. That's why looking at the hair and what the hair is naturally doing is important, because you could do this fabulous haircut and then, you know, their hair does something different with what layers or texture that you put in it, and it did not do the result that you had expected. So yeah, I kind of went through a lot today. I do want to say this isn't 100% my natural texture. I put it in 2 pigtail braids so that it would have some soft wave to it, because at this length, my hair decides to go, right? So even if I sit there and diffuse it and curl it and do all the right things, it actually takes more work than if I had styled it straight or curled it. And so this just gives it a little bit of shine and a little bit of definition to the waves, but it still has a little bit of my natural texture in there. And just FYI, the products I use today, I love the Moroccan-Oil line. I use the Moroccan-Oil original treatment, and I cocktailed it with Olaplex number 6 Bond Smoother. I'm a big fan of Olaplex and Moroccan-Oil. So you got the whole gamut. You got my hair story. You got my hair story. You got my philosophy on how to approach clients and natural texture. And hopefully this tidbit gives you a little insight on me. I am hopefully going to be doing some more episodes in the future. Sorry for the long break. I didn't monetize this channel, so it's not really something that I have to keep up on to stay monetized or get money or whatever. This is really just kind of a fleshing out of my brand. And recently I sent out an email newsletter to all of my clients supporting work in Washington State to pass legislation for Black Lives Matter, so police accountability, and a number of other bills that I found to be very important. Actually, on my blog on darcyhairdesign.com, I did share some of those bills in my blog, one of my blog posts. So if you have any questions, please let me know. And you can go to darcyhairdesign.com and find out more information about my business, or emersonsalon.com. And yeah, so just trying to make sure that I share with you who I am. And if it gives you insight on what you need to do, even just in life, can't hurt, right? So awesome. Thank you so much for watching today. And I want to send you off with love and light. And today is International Women's Day. So show love to the women in your life, whether that is a biological cis woman or whether that's a trans woman. All women are women, and all women deserve appreciation and respect and equal rights. So thank you so much, and thank you for joining the Vocal Cosmetologist. Have a good day.